Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm Jason Weil. This is the Jupyter Frontends weekly meeting for Wednesday, July 24th, 2024. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got, looks like 8 people on the call today. Um, we have a few items on the agenda. Frederick listed some things. He said he won't be able to attend, but I'm going to read them for the record anyway. Um, so Frederick writes, there's new security rules and update snapshots job. I looked at how best to handle the current situation that prevents the update job to be executed on non-member pull requests. It looks like the easiest thing to do would be to create a team with read access, which we invite trusted contributor as an outside collaborator. For example, I invited a Google Summer of Code contributor for test purposes. Um, and then there's a screenshot of that in the notes. Then on one of her pull requests, the first update snapshot command failed. She was not yet a contributor, and then the second passed. Okay, this is something that I'm not familiar with. I'm not sure if anybody has any questions or comments about that for the record.
I would say this is a good approach. At least it seems like a good approach to me. I do not know if GitHub has any limits on how many outside collaborators we can have. I know that there is a couple of hundred of folks in the organization already. So if someone from EC starts pinging us that we have too many outside collaborators, then we can probably revise that strategy. But I suspect it's fine for now.
Any other comments or questions about this?
Think one question would be, when do we add someone to that team? Like when do we? Is it someone that who already opened PRs in the past, or someone that has been contributing? I don't know if we need to have some guidelines so that people can more easily decide whether to add someone to that team.
Okay. Sorry, I'm doing two things at once here. Um, I guess we
Maybe we need to open an issue or have like a private discussion about this if we want to continue discussing this. I don't know if Frederick opened one already.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like if this is still an issue, it would be, it seems like this is kind of a, what is it called, a maintenance issue for the lab repo, right? Okay. I guess I can leave a note saying, um, that can be, I guess, an action item. I don't know who wants to start it, but I'm not going to nominate myself for this one. Okay, I'm not hearing any additional comments on this one, so I'll move on. I'm next up in the agenda. Um, I have an issue and a pull request that I'd like comments on. This is not something that I'm imminently going to merge in, but the latter one is something that I'm trying to move forward based on feedback. The first is I was discussing with my team about the cell toolbar, which currently has 6 buttons in it, and whether the move up, move down buttons should remain in the default cell toolbar layout. There was a bit of confusion given the simplicity of the icon about what these do. And we also don't collect telemetry to indicate, are people using this? It's more of a gut feeling. So if you have opinions about this or you know anyone who does, please weigh in on that, issue 16607. I also have a draft pull request, which is working, although the tests are not quite complete. They are better than they were, but it's adding a run button on every cell. And the idea is that if the cell has never been run, you will see a run button to the left of the cell over the empty prompt. And for a cell that has been run, if you mouse over the prompt, you'll see a run button. It's a different user experience. A couple of people, including off the record, have asked me, why not just add this to the cell toolbar? And the answer that I got talking with the designer I've been working with is that we wanted something that was even more noticeable than the cell toolbar that stands alone. It seems more similar to the enhanced cell toolbar that I think Frederick had previously maintained, but is now kind of out of maintenance. It's kind of been superseded by the cell toolbar. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on the record, but if you want to check it out, there's some screenshots and animations in the pull request, and you can try it out on your own PC as well. Nick's got his hand up and he's making some noise. I don't know.
So on-screen buttons, the biggest win there is if they are visible on mobile at all times and never go away. Whether that's a setting or something like that, but that's it's almost impossible to navigate where things would actually be when you're on mobile.
Yep.
So having that button right there would be really good. If it's adding a button, it needs to be a place where you can put more buttons, or you can remove the default buttons and add other buttons. I think the cell toolbar experiment has been not super successful. There's a lot of cases where it doesn't work very well. Again, especially on mobile where it's not really usable. So I'm not sure if the cell prompt already has one new big button in it that's centered in the middle of everything, and was kind of surprising when that showed up. I think generally that whole behavior needs to be rethought a little bit. Mm-hmm. And the problem, of course, comes, your first cell that you make is one line. It's one line height. And there's nowhere to put any UI. The only UI you probably are going to want is run. So that's, that's going to be your go-to guy. But that's, particularly that experience is where the cell toolbar is most surprising, because you start doing stuff and then it goes away. And now I don't know what to do anymore because it's gone.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, from what I understand, the motivation for having this is in part because people who are new to Jupyter may not understand that they have to run a cell. Like when you hit enter, it doesn't actually run anything. Whereas in a Python REPL on the command line, when you hit enter, it runs whatever you've entered on that line, with exceptions, of course. But I also feel like the button is going to have, when you mouse over it, it shows you the shift enter shortcut that we all know and love. And it's pretty easy to pick up. It's the kind of thing that once you've used Jupyter for even a few minutes, you will be aware of this. I just saw a comment float in my inbox that Colab works this way. VS Code also works this way. In fact, a lot of open source and commercial products built on Jupyter are adding a contextual run button like this. And I think that's partly the motivation as well, is that people are starting to expect it. However, by design, JupyterLab has less space around cells than most other Jupyter products do, particularly VS Code. And so we have to wedge things in, but I do see William has his hand up.
Yeah, I just made that comment about collab, and I guess I would add to that that it would be good to maybe make the behavior identical to collab rather than subtly different. So right now it's kind of like collab, but the way the hover behavior works to show the play button's different. So like if you're going to do this, why not do it in a way that's exactly the same so people's muscle memory aligns?
Okay.
That would be my comment.
So
because it's really close, but not quite the same.
Yeah, here's a pitch. So if the prompt area was less the prompt area, I mean, yes, it's the prompt area. It's the vertical space on the left of the page. But it's, your cell ID has nothing to do with anything you see in the prompt. Your cell ID exists outside of that, and talking about things is whatever. If that button was, in a sense, the state of that cell, right now it's a, string without any contextual meaning. It has no tags on it. It's just like, is there an asterisk in it? I don't know. Clicking that button would almost reflect some of the information that you get from the kernel message indicator, which is now no longer on the right-hand side because now there's another button there. I don't know. So that dot we always had there. If that button was a button, which is good, but when that cell is running or queued to be run, became a button that would cancel that button. And when that button finishes running, that button gets updated with the current prompt number. And that strongly combines the fact that an execution of a cell is not the cell itself. As for muscle memory on Colab and VS Code and JetBrains, and don't care. I don't think we need to worry too much about that. We need to try and do the right thing that helps expose the underlying model. So yeah, if your default cell has that run button, that never goes away unless you choose for it not to be shown, and there has to be a setting for it to choose to not be shown. And then other things can go in there as there's other stuff. I think that would start driving some things home. Yeah, that was all. Sorry for the wandering.
I mean, for conflict of interest reasons, I tend to avoid using or even looking at Colab. But I also don't, I don't want to do something that would cause discomfort for people who are already familiar with it. So I think there is a potential for finding a happy medium here. But I also agree with Nick that like we shouldn't be doing this for parity with any one product. We want to do this for the sake of the best user experience. So I will take a look at that. If my suggestion to other folks, if you haven't formed an opinion yet, take a look at the pull request, try it out locally. I'm very curious about what you feel about this, and potential for future expansion. We can always have other things, much like with the cell toolbar itself. That went in 2 years ago. There's still a lot of open questions about it. And in fact, the per cell run button the request for it long predates the cell toolbar. So it is possible we could put it in on the right as well. Okay, well, I feel like we've spent a good amount of time discussing it, but I want to make sure we have time for other contributors here.
I just wanted to bring up a point.
Oh, you go ahead.
I already left a comment on that. How would you track a cell in Colab, for example?
There still is a grab target that you can grab. It's just you have to grab now the white space to the left of the prompt and not the prompt itself.
Which is getting smaller. And that's
Yeah.
my point, that I opened Colab and I'm trying to find a way to move a cell, and I do not really see one. I don't use Colab usually, but I see that they do have up and down buttons in the toolbar. So it seems to me as by introducing these features, like the up and down button and the run cell icon, we are making it more similar to Colab, but for the existing users, it might feel strange or annoying.
Yeah.
So it's a slightly different model. One model where you use mouse to rearrange things or shortcuts and mouse, and another model where you basically have to click through to manipulate to make the notebook into the shape you want.
Yeah.
And maybe that points to the fact that maybe we do not need the up and down buttons in the cell toolbar as much, because it used to be, or it is possible to drag cells around in JupyterLab/notebook.
I think the enhanced cell toolbar actually put the up and down buttons on the left side of the cell, which I think is similar to some other products, but it also required significantly more real estate, vertical real estate for a cell, which I was told was kind of a no-go in JupyterLab to make cells taller to accommodate more buttons in the vicinity of their edges.
Well, making cells taller might be difficult, but assuming that the user has wide enough screen, making them narrower to fit more on the margins might be acceptable. So this is like a discussion. Maybe we shouldn't think only about one kind of screen, but a different solution for mobile, different solution for 4K screen. On 4K screens, in notebooks, usually there is lots of space on sides.
Okay. Yeah, I also hear Nick's comments about mobile. That's something that I was looking at recently. And mobile, for example, usually doesn't have like a hover state. Most people are not using touchscreen devices with like styluses that can convey hover. So everything has to be visible there. And so this button is largely going to be not visible on mobile, but there's already a toolbar button to run the current cell, which on a mobile device will be closer to the user's like focus anyway. Any other comments about this? I mean, much like the cell toolbar itself, which I don't know if you remember, but I certainly do, it went on for months, us like iterating on design, soliciting feedback, and as people have observed, it's still far from perfect. There's still a lot of enhancements, and if you don't like it, you have the option to turn it off, and I fully respect that. This is going to be the same way here, that like if the cell toolbar is disabled, the run button will also not appear.
Well,
And
so on that point, that there is an option to disable cell toolbar.
yep.
Yet there isn't. You need to disable the plugin, which works as long as you have permissions to do that.
Yep.
And on many deployed instances where I was working, I was pretty annoyed because I couldn't disable that settings editor.
Oh,
so,
interesting.
Yeah, if we are introducing more features which are like very in the way of user, I'd prefer if there was an actual setting, not only a way to disable the plugin.
So there is a setting to turn off the run button, but you're saying that in the settings editor, people wouldn't have access to that?
No, what I'm saying is that the cell toolbar is a plugin. And in order to disable cell toolbar, you have to disable the plugin, which is different from changing a setting, because the place where plugins are, the configuration for which plugins are enabled is different from the place where settings are stored.
Yeah.
And on many instances which are hosted, not like when you are running on your own computer, administrator can choose to disable to prevent you from toggling the plugins because, for example, they have a plugin which monitors something.
So as an action item for this, I'm going to open an issue to add settings to just not show the cell toolbar without disabling that plugin. Because I think that's a good enhancement. And I think that would be a non-controversial option to add. Okay. Any other questions, comments about this? If not, Jeremy is up next with an issue regarding Jupyter AI and Jupyter Chat.
Yeah, so we have this Jupyter Chat repo, and I think it started as a split from Jupyter AI to a separate repo, and I was wondering if the plan was still to uh, change Jupyter AI so that it now depends on that separate chat package, because this would mean that we wouldn't have to port the changes that are made to Jupyter AI to that chat package. And I was wondering if there was any blockers for doing the switch. So I think concretely that means removing all of the Jupyter chat code base from Jupyter AI and depend on the Jupyter chat package directly. And I see that in Jupyter AI there were some recent PRs adding new features to the chat interface, and that's why I wanted to bring this up now, just so that we just to know if people were still okay with this idea, um, and what would the best way for proceeding would be. So yeah, we have a couple of Jupyter AI contributors here. If you have any opinion on this, otherwise, I think the issue is still the place where we can discuss this. And to give more context on the Jupyter chat, so the motivation was to have a chat interface that could be used for other things than just AI features, and that's why having it in its separate package is useful, because other extensions can also depend on it and create a chat interface more easily, so that they don't have to build their own again from scratch.
What is the long-term vision for Jupyter Chat? Is this expected to be something that is like bundled with JupyterLab?
Not necessarily, I think. Just like Jupyter AI, I think it's still its own extension. And there are different packages in Jupyter Chat. So one of them is the Chat UI, which is a pure JavaScript package. But then there is also the collaborative chat for RTC. And I think those can still live as a separate package.
Okay. Because I remember the vision was that RTC would be like a standard feature of JupyterLab, but then we split that out when we went from Lab 3 to Lab 4. So now
Yeah,
you
right.
choose to install it.
I'm not sure it's gonna be, yeah, I think it's a question for everybody, like whether we want RTC by default in lab. It's not clear yet, because for now it works well as an extension, because it's just a package to install, and those who don't want RTC, they don't install it. And I think if it's the same for Jupyter AI, and there are a lot of Jupyter deployments that don't use it, I think. So they just don't need to install the extension if they don't want to. No. I think that here the question is more about the code organization, and whether the development on Jupyter AI would be impacted by this. So like, because if you want to make a new feature in the chat that is going to be used in Jupyter AI, then this will have to land in Jupyter Chat first, be released, and then consumed by Jupyter AI. So this may add some extra, maintenance work. So maybe that's the main thing to consider. But the benefits are that you can reuse that package more easily in other extensions.
I'm like there has been a number of pull requests touching the chat widget in Jupyter AI that I've seen, and it seems that maybe it's not the time to do the switch if we are going to do it, because there is still quite some evolving ideas on how the chat should work with an AI model. So for example, there was the addition of toolbars to the code. There is an active pull request changing the send button to allow to include code snippets from the notebook. And the interaction model, like there is something like streaming of messages for AI models, but when you chat with a human, they usually don't show you the message as they type. So I'm not convinced personally whether there is such a value of depending on the chat package in Jupyter AI to to make it worth, given the additional burden of like coordinating between these two repositories. That said, maybe it is not feasible to switch the entire chat interface. Maybe instead specific components could be reused from Jupyter Chat. So instead of saying like we will use the entire Jupyter Chat, maybe there are interfaces and some like message boxes. Maybe if those are individual React components, maybe that's the way to integrate the two, and maybe there is actual value in this approach, as long as these building blocks are still highly customizable so that Jupyter AI can tune them to its needs.
Yeah, I think that would be the idea. If the chat will have to be highly customizable, and it will have to provide the necessary API that Jupyter AI needs to add these extra features. So for example, you could consider having a chat panel without the code suggestion features, but then Jupyter AI as a consumer would just say, okay, I request these features to be visible, and then provide. So Jupyter Chat will provide the hooks for this, just via a token that will be consumed by the Jupyter AI plugin.
Does it also use MUI material, or is it building everything from like Jupyter UI toolkit and pure components?
No, I think it's using the same as Jupyter AI initially, because I think it was mostly just a copy of the code base at a given time, and then that's why also, like, now maybe things have started to diverge a bit. It's not clear yet, since there are new things added to Jupyter AI, and maybe new things added to Jupyter Chat as well. But I believe that it's using the same material UI. Let me check.
Yeah, it
Yep,
seems like it is.
it is. It is. So I think that will be no issue. For now, I think we could just stick to this. It's no big deal. until unless we really want to switch to Jupyter UI toolkit at some point, then it's also possible, I guess. Yeah. Mm. And then there is the use case of having both Jupyter AI and RTC available in a JupyterLab instance, where you have RTC or where you can consider the AI model as a collaborator, and then you have multiple users all interacting with the same chat interface, and you also have the AI model there. So then maybe that means being able to support add command to be able to ask the AI model directly for something, and the regular users can just chat normally in the chat. And it sounds like it would be maybe a bit more user-friendly than having two different chat panels, like one for Jupyter AI and one for RTC. So that's also another reason for trying to reuse the same component for both use cases. So if there are any concerns on all of this, maybe it could be nice to list them on the issue, so we see if it's too early or if there are a few things missing in Jupyter chat. It's this one. Okay. It's also in the notes. Otherwise, maybe a good step would be to just try to do it. So that means opening a draft PR and see what happens on the Jupyter AI repo, and see if there are things that break or there are things missing, or maybe some API missing on Jupyter chat.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that issue, because I noticed there's a few other issues and pull requests linked to it. And this is something we've been talking about for a while. Yeah, one of the other things that we added recently to the chat functionality, by we, I mean my team, I personally didn't contribute to this one, was like streaming support, because that was a common request that some AI models can support streaming responses. So you get them, in batches. And I'm not sure whether Jupyter Chat supports that. And it is concerning if chat and AI's chat interface start to diverge in features, because then that just makes the integration more difficult over time.
Yeah, that's exactly why I'm bringing this now.
Yeah, try to deal with this early.
Yeah, we have I think we have an issue on Jupyter Chat about the streaming messages, but I'm not sure if it's been ported yet.
Okay.
But concretely, that means
yeah, I think that's a must-have for AI chatting is streaming support, because a lot of the major UIs support it. It's funny because it feels to me kind of like a throwback to the modem era, where you could see sentences flash onto the screen in real time, but people expect it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that so I found the issue. It's not fixed yet. So I think it's not supported yet. But concretely, that probably means going to the Jupyter AI PR, and then just copy the changes over to Jupyter Chat. Maybe put that behind a flag or a config option to enable or disable streaming of messages, and then that's it. Because like we were talking about before, for humans, maybe it doesn't make sense to stream messages, because you usually just send the whole message at once. So whether it would be on or off by default, like it doesn't really matter because Jupyter Chat is just supposed to be just a library in the end.
All right, any other questions, comments about this? If not, Mike has a few topics to discuss here.
Sure. So the first one on the agenda is also relating to Jupyter AI. There is an issue that was open for quite some time, and that it relates to the default model not being synchronized between the chat and the magics, which is quite understandable if you understand the architecture. So even though the Jupyter AI package does depend on Jupyter AI Magics package, the copy of Jupyter AI Magics, which is used in the kernel, in IPython kernel, is different because the kernel environment is separate from the server environment. And the question is, can we make it so that when user chooses a model in the chat settings, that it also propagates to the magics, and there is of course a way. One of the proposals is in the issue written down in my comment, which would be sending a message to the kernel with code to change some environmental variable, just a variable, if Jupyter AI is detected. But this doesn't seem like a clean solution, and I do not know of a clean solution other than reworking the way that the environment variables are updated. We already do that through Jupyter client, IPyKernel to IPython to pass the session name environment variable. But other than that, there was no discussion or no proposals, I think, to make the Python codes or IPython have the metadata of a cell, for example, available during execution so that it could read something which is set by the frontend on the cell or on the notebook. But if anyone is interested or has thoughts on this, I would really appreciate some pointers in the issue or separately. Okay, hearing no comments, I move to an announcement that JupyterLab 4.2 feature freeze and beta version it's slowly approaching. So we have about 1 week left.
Do you mean 4.3?
For free, yes.
Okay, I'll edit that.
Yeah, well, we updated it at the same time.
Conflicted.
Yeah. So I've tried to review a couple of pull requests. I saw that Frederick also reviewed a number of those, and I saw that Jeremy was helping with this as well. But there are two takes. One, if you have a pull request that you would like to be reviewed by 4.3, and it is already in a state of nearly being finished, you can add the needs review label that will help us to find it. And if it's in draft, I would suggest undrafting it, even if there's like 1 or 2 final tiny things that you have left, because we have just too many pull requests open, and it is difficult to find the ones that are due for a review. And I have one pull request which I tagged as needs review. It's a long one. So it was actually opened by someone else, but I just finished it based on a triage that we had earlier. So that it adds functionality to upload a folder, and is using a decently supported API across all browsers. Today I pushed a commit to add a test for it. Unfortunately, these APIs are, like most APIs, are not very well mocked, and there is no way to test that in Playwright using integration tests, because Playwright doesn't support this. So yeah, I think it's ready to go, but if anyone would like to have a final look, I would appreciate that. Otherwise, I will be merging this pull request next week. And as a final reminder, there is a number of issues with needs design label. I think there's about 16 and over 100 with needs discussion. We should probably go over them and remove the needs discussion for some of these, but the more recent ones are likely things that the triage team was not confident about, and labeled them as potentially needing input from other contributors or maintainers on any user who is interested in the issue discussed. So that's all from me.
All right, well, we have about 13 minutes till the top of the hour. Any other topics that people want to discuss on the record? All right, not hearing any, so I will stop the recording. Everyone brace yourselves.